All right, this is the last of the notes for this unit 2. And what we're really going to focus on are some of the methods in which we can use imaging to help learn about and tell us things about the brain. And we'll also dabble a little bit into the genetic aspects of psychology. We'll spend a lot more time here when we get to human development, but it's a great place to introduce some of those ideas. So as you see here on the screen, the first one we're going to talk about is the EEG, electroencephalogram. This machine, as you can see from the image that has been added in here, the one that I stole off Google, but it puts a lot of electrodes on your brain, excuse me, and it shows the activity usually used when you're sleeping. Okay, so it's useful in measuring the disorders dealing with over or under activity, such as seizures. It also is great for sleep disorders, things like insomnia, okay, night terrors, and so on, like some of those other issues. Okay, so that's where you'd be learning about this. Hopefully, if you're keeping up and kind of checking out those crash courses, they'll do a quick intro using an EEG machine explaining kind of how it works. So that's what the EEGs are. Next, we got a PET scan, positron emission tomography. Okay, this is used to measure the activity of your glucose. Okay, the sugars and stuff in your blood, and they will give you a contact or an injection or a pill that will color in your blood, so that when you're inside this machine, it's able to identify where that blood is going, whether it's cut off from somewhere, how the circulation goes. And you can see the small brain images to the bottom right. You see the normal brain where you've got the flow of the various colors that are represented in the PET scan. Then you've got the impairment where you see there are large holes there in the center, and then Alzheimer's where you see a lot of activity, blood flow in this instance that isn't making it through the brain, right? And we know obviously Alzheimer's is a pretty serious degenerative condition. CT scans, computerized tomography, right? With these are similar to x-rays, but more in the lines for organs, soft tissues, a little bit of blood transference and stuff as well, your blood vessels. You can identify bones. Obviously, you can see the skull, the really bright white area surrounding this brain. But then you can see the material of the brain, right? You can see the soft material in there. So what it does, it helps to identify areas of head injuries, of tumors, of strokes, of bleeding, all that other stuff that you may not be able to get from a normal x-ray. Okay. Then we've got an MRI, magnetic resonance image. Okay. Use the spinning atoms if you've ever had one on your knee, okay, or any other body part that you've injured, to take a look at maybe like ligaments and kind of see how that's going on. But it'll give you a structural picture of that area, whether it's the ligaments surrounding your knee or your brain. Okay, and you can see those MRI images down here on the bottom right corner, and how vivid they are, right? Again, non-invasive. You can do it with or without a contact, something to be able to identify color if necessary, but you can see the holes and the activity and so on in the brain. Very cool stuff. The fMRI, right, now we're getting to add the functional aspect to the resonance imaging. So here you can see the normal MRI picture, but overlaid is the functionality of it, the electricity that's happening in a snapshot given moment. So while somebody is doing it, it will light up with the localization of where the brain is firing while they're doing those activities. So you can see speech. And this is back to what we were talking about, right brain, left brain. It's happening all over the place. Okay? It's happening all over both sides of the brain, front, back, so on. So we can spend some time if you want to really dive into the localization of where all those regions are, but that kind of helps show the debunking of the myth of, we only do this on one side of the brain versus the other. Finger tapping, listening, all that stuff, being able to identify where the brain is firing. Next, we got SPECT scans. They're kind of the new scan on the block, if you will. Single photon emission computed tomography. And there's two different ways of kind of looking at, using, and identifying these SPECT scans. You've got your surface view, which is showing you, this is just kind of the tomography, the outside of your brain, right? What it looks like with its bumps and organization and smooth areas and so on. Then you get the active view, which is more closer to in kin to the functional MRI, where you can see what's working and what's lighting up, where the blood flow is going, where the electricity is, and all that kind of fun stuff. I've got loaded in here right after this a really neat TED Talk that kind of explains from a gentleman who was kind of on the front lines of doing SPECT scan research, why they're important and how they're used to be able to identify brains. And it's really cool. And again, if you're into psychology and you're into this and you want to get in and be a researcher, like these are where you find those niches to be able to kind of pursue a future career, right? Or a research base. So that's what SPECT scans are. Really neat. So here's the video that I was talking to you about. I'll let you watch that on your own time. I'm not going to roll through here, but pretty cool. The last part that I want to take a look at is the genetics of everything, right? We are cellular organisms, right? Broken down cells into chromosomes and DNA, and we get half from our mother and half from our father. And that DNA, much as you've probably seen in like crime investigation shows, is unique to us. So what we're made of, everybody is completely unique. So the way that the body's created, the chemical neurotransmitters that we release, what it takes to release them, how we feel, interpret, interact, and everything else, very unique. Except twins. As you'll learn to find if you haven't realized yet, but twins are very valuable to psychology because, especially if you're looking at identical twins, okay, monozygotic twins, where two humans come from the same sperm and egg and are genetically, DNA-wise, identical, versus your fraternal or dizygotic, where two sperm, two egg, and then you do not have the same DNA coding. Okay, the ones that are most interesting are those monozygotic because most often they're going to be identical in terms of their genetic makeup. Most often they're going to be identical in terms of environment raised. So researchers can really start to pull apart some of those mysteries of nature versus nurture. Okay, and to a large degree, you get a lot of that similarity there in the dizygotic, minus the genetic similarity. Okay, so twins are very, very valuable research tools in psychology just because of this genetic makeup. And I got a couple things on here, right? This is cool, kind of breaks down that nature versus nurture discussion that can get started. And we'll hit this again when we get to development, but it's a good intro into it. So check that out. And then just getting an idea of kind of how this all works and the importance of genetics in psychology. Because what we really need to do is we need to figure out how the brain and body are working together in these various situations. So when you have twins being able to be added into these studies, you can take essentially the same genetic coding, kind of change the environment a little bit, depending on what you're studying, and see how it plays out. It also gives us an opportunity, using genetics, to see how we progress, okay? How we change in response over time to changing times around us, to our new environment, and to the new type of world that we're living in. Okay, so for instance, there could very well be a lot of researchers taking a look at psychologically how we are all as a human race responding to this pandemic at a different time, and then also being able to compare it to past pandemics. Okay, so that is very much in play. Okay, all right, we'll see you out there.